Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. I see a lot of familiar faces, which is very exciting. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists and then give them the opportunity to kind of talk a little bit more about themselves. And then we'll talk about some cursory issues in the video game industry, and then we'll move into Q&A. So start thinking about your questions. So this is Emily Pantafel. She is the Senior Manager of Talent Acquisition at Take-Two Interactive Software. Emily leads a team supporting the hiring initiatives in North America and India. With over 15 years experience, she specializes in recruiting, tech, engineering, and gaming talent. Emily is passionate about the candidates' and employees' experience and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Omar Shakir is the former game director at Avalanche Studios. Omar started his career on the publishing and marketing side at Atari before heading over to Rockstar Games as an editor and camera artist. After shipping Max Payne 3 and LA Noire, Omar joined Avalanche Studios here in New York as lead content producer on Just Cause 3, moving into a narrative director role for Just Cause 4, and then ending his time there as a game director. And we have Kat Small. She's a game maker, developer, co-organizer of the Game Devs of Color Expo. Kat's bio had me in a chokehold when I was reading it, so I can't wait to learn more about her. So, with a design career of over 12 years, Kat has done design work for clients of all sizes, such as Asana, Etsy, SoundCloud, and NASDAQ. Kat started coding around age 10. She now makes games by herself and with her friends. Kat is the co-organizer of the Game Devs of Color Expo, an annual event highlighting the power held by people of color in games. And then we have Kurt Young. He is the founder and CEO of Mokuni Games. Mokuni is a New York-based gaming company that creates mobile and VR and AR games. Their flagship game, Kitty in a Box, has amassed tens of millions of downloads. Kurt is currently exploring Web3 projects that integrate AI technology to create innovative experiences. And Kurt has an MFA in computer science and has professional experience working in Shanghai. So we have a lot of people from a lot of different areas in gaming, which is fantastic. So you can kind of get a good idea of what different roles in gaming do and how to get into those roles. So, Kat. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself, about your experience, how you got into gaming and the Game Dev of Color Expo.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So I am actually from New York. I'm from the Bronx originally. I got into games as a kid. You know, I loved playing different games. I played, for example, Sonic the Hedgehog, huge Sonic the Hedgehog fan. And I just really enjoyed the way that games could kind of show alternate worlds and just get you really thinking. And so I wanted to figure out a way to make them. When I was a kid, I learned about dress-up dolls, and I started to actually code my own dress-up dolls. So that's actually how I learned to program. And then when I got into college, I actually went to SVA, but I hung out with a bunch of programmer nerds at another school, and they didn't have artists, so I volunteered to be the artist for them. And that was really fun. I got to go to a bunch of game jams and work on a bunch of projects with them. And then over time, I started to learn about the broader industry. Now, what I will say is at the same time, it was kind of rough to figure out how do I build a network of people and how do I feel included. And so that was the major thing that led me to want to build a space where we could nerd out about game development as people of color, but also not just talk about diversity, which is a thing that people of color often get asked to do at gaming events. So that was really the basis of the event. It maybe sounds kind of weird, but like we literally just come together and like highlight the awesome work that folks are doing, and then talk about like how did you make this game, or like what's games business like. And I think that's really valuable because a lot of the topics that we're covering are the things that aren't often talked about, and it's really nice to have the space to kind of do it together and bring everyone up at the same time.
That's amazing. And the event's in New York, right?
Yeah, so we have a lot of the event in New York. We, for the past couple of years, because of COVID, have been holding off on doing the in-person portion of the event, but the Game Devs of Color, the next one, is coming up this September, the 27th to the 30th. It's going to be online. It's going to be like $20, so it's really affordable. We're hoping that next year we can do something in person again. We'll keep it affordable, and we're thinking about figuring out a way to do like a mixer or something like that this year to actually kind of start getting those in-person vibes back, because we know that it's really important to have social time together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Amazing. That's so cool. You're so cool. Okay, Emily. So tell us a little bit more about your history, your experience, and then tell everybody a little bit about what the application process is like at Take-Two, and how can an applicant stand out when applying to a job, and are we still doing cover letters?
That's a loaded question. I will start telling you a little bit about myself. I am also from New York, born in Brooklyn, raised in Staten Island.
Nice.
I'll apologize about that in advance, but my background is not traditional. I didn't have essentially a formal education background. I started and found the recruiting industry at a young age and found success at a young age working as what I would have coined more of a headhunter at the time. Everything that I have done and everywhere that I have been has been purely on the fact of networking and just working my tush off. So yeah, I started as an agency recruiter, and I developed a book of clients, and I've had success, and I've learned the technology industry just by asking questions from people like yourself. Candidates and students are always the way that I've learned, and I feel so privileged to be in the position that I am to continue to be a student of everyone that I meet. I was able to transition into corporate recruiting, and I personally always had a passion. My goal was to work in entertainment. I was a makeup artist previously. I had always had a passion for the entertainment. I think when you're from New York, you just love the arts, you love entertainment, and I always wanted to be there, and to actually be here through networking and relationship building is such a privilege, and I don't take it for granted for a second. I spent about 7 years at Madison Square Garden working on what is now announced to be the Sphere, which is opening up this year. I was part of the original team building and the staff out for that, and I was introduced to the gaming industry there, and which led me to building my network out again further, which led me to Take-Two. And I joined the organization back in June of this year, and it's just been an opportunity to get even further immersed in the industry and learn about our studios and how they operate and what the creative process looks like in a AAA and AA and indie studio environment. So lots of privilege, and really excited to continue that journey of learning. The application process, so I will say what we have done really well is that we have developed a really equitable process. That's important to us as an organization, make sure that we have a fair opportunity for all folks to come and apply and raise their hands for jobs in the organization. My team does not focus on production per se right now, but we do hire for a lot of technology jobs and support jobs, and we support some of the indie and AA studios within the organization, and there's a large focus on building out security as it relates to our personal and intellectual property and our corporate entities. So we're building out India too, so I've had the opportunity to expand my reach globally, which is amazing. With that being said, I always tell people, have a great resume, have a great personal brand, have a great portfolio. I always tell engineers and designers, artists to represent yourself in your portfolio. Don't fall into the space where you only have intellectual property as code samples or art samples. You need to be a student of this, and you need to be constantly working and creating your brand and working on your craft. It's incredibly important to flex that muscle and have a place in a repository to show what that skill set is, and continue to leverage your network and have that portfolio and your asset at your fingertips to always be able to share that. Cover letters are ad hoc, I would say. I think that there are some more traditional managers out there that want to know you and want to know know that you took the time in the application process to talk about yourself and how your skill set can relate to that job, and then again embedding that portfolio and those assets that you've created on your own into that so they can get to know you and take a peek behind the covers. A code sample would be great too if you have something on there. Make sure that code sample works or the code is good too, because it is a representation of yourself and it's a living and breathing thing. And I'll stop there. I talk a lot, and I know that's not my superpower, but again, personal brand, networking, and really working the application process. It is a little bit like dating. I hate to say, the more volume, the more dates you go on, sometimes the more long-term relationships that you land in. So keep at it and work on your personal brand and your information, and don't worry about a cover letter. I mean, if they're asking for it, do it, but more often than not,
It's like
we're not asking for it anymore.
It's corny to say, but you're right with the, make sure your brand is clear, but make sure you're also being yourself. I know it's so lame to say, but I know when I hire and I look at cover letters or resumes, if you're inauthentic,
Absolutely.
it shows. So just like be yourself.
And full transparency, sometimes the quirkiness sticks out, and it makes folks want to talk to you.
Okay, so one of my game jobs, I'm not going to say where, one of my game jobs for my cover letter, I wrote a sonnet. I was an English major. I wrote a sonnet about why I wanted to work at this company.
Okay.
And it worked. And
You put the work in.
Yeah. So okay, Kurt, what went into launching Mokuni Games? Give us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you launched Mokuni Games, and any advice you would give to developers who are looking to maybe start a small studio.
Right. So before I came here, I worked in Shanghai for about 3 years. So I worked in game and animation film. So I worked my way to an art director position. Then I decided I wanted to make indie game. So come to New York. So I started my MFA computer art study here in the SVA. Right after graduation, I started my own company to create the game that I like to make. So it's been almost exactly 10 years.
Oh my
So
gosh.
and our company is still alive. So I'm very happy about that.
Cool. Okay, Omar, tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you were able to experience so many different roles in the game industry.
Oh man, what a story.
Yeah.
So I went to college for something completely different other than games. I was probably like a lot of people in this audience, mostly fanboys and girls of movies, television, all kinds. I think my favorite game growing up was Chrono Trigger, which I played like 1,200 times backwards and forwards. I'm also probably one of the only panelists here that's from Jersey. You feel free to stop listening now if you like, but I promise you it has a New York storyline. I went to school in Pennsylvania. I got a degree in psychology, and I pretty much spent, I think, most of my life avoiding living in New York because all I saw of New York in movies and in television was just like crowded streets and crazy action situations, and I was like, grossly agoraphobic. So I was like, I'm gonna go to school in Pennsylvania where there's trees. But when I graduated college, it was like the only place you could get a job was in Manhattan. So I was working for a temp agency, and they placed me in this finance firm. I think it was called U.S. Trust, like across the street from Charles Schwab, like printing out documents for portfolio managers. And so I was in charge of the budget for like office supplies. So I would order a ton of office paper and print out movie scripts and game design manuals and just sit there at my desk reading all of that stuff. Eventually I worked there, I think, for about 2 years, saved up enough money. I was living with my mother at the time in Jersey. Saved up enough money to take classes at New York Film Academy because I wanted to learn a little bit more about filmmaking. My life has been a constellation of, I'm kind of interested in that. I'm kind of interested in this. So I went and took some classes in film editing and things like that. And then I guess the inception of my game development career happened one night when I was in the edit lab in Union Square, a long time ago now. and Jerry Sherlock, the owner of the Film Academy, came in and fired the post-production supervisor at like 1 a.m. in the edit lab. Everybody was, it was just like me and like the post-production supervisor, and I was in like the back corner, like where nobody could see me. And he comes in and he fires this guy, and then as he's like storming out, he like turns over and he looks at me, and I swear to you, this is a true story. He says, "Hey kid, do you know how to use any of this stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know how to use Final Cut Pro." He's like, "Do you want that guy's job?" So I started working at the New York Film Academy. After that, I hired some TAs to work with me. One of the TAs is working as an intern at a company called Atari, and he asked me if I wanted to work with him at Atari as an intern, editing video game trailers, since I knew how to use Final Cut Pro. So I said, sure, I love that idea. I went and worked at Atari as an editor, and what was interesting about that moment in my life was that Atari was in this weird phase where they were still a publisher, they were still Atari, they were still the logo, but they had kind of shrunk down their development capacity. They were mostly focused on publishing. So all of the developers that were located remotely in different parts of the world, like Eden, Simbin, CD Projekt before they were CD Projekt Red and made The Witcher, they were working with us, the publishing team, and we were assisting them with like testing dev builds and like QAing the builds for them. And I was just an intern going, I'll do whatever anybody asks me to do. So now I'm getting like real world experience from actual developers at a very young age. And yeah, from there, they really liked my work. I got hired as an associate producer. And again, just absorbing information from all the people that would teach me whatever they had to teach me here. We were on 38th and 5th. Most of my career has existed on 5th or Broadway in some way. 30th and 5th, and we went down to Soho where Rockstar is, and then Avalanche was right down the street from that, which is incredibly lucky. I got headhunted by Rockstar after about 3 years of working at Atari to be a editor and a cinematic artist. They were going to show me how to integrate mocap data and solve it. And one of my mentors at Atari, somebody that had taken me under their wing, mostly because I was there just as late as he was always the last guy to leave besides me. We always saw each other in the elevator at like 10 o'clock at night. And he was like, "Oh, you're still here?" And I was like, "You're still here?" And he's like, "Well, I'm the boss." And I'm like, "Well, I'm the intern." And he called me up while I was at Rockstar, and he said, "I'm opening up a studio for Avalanche in New York to make Just Cause 3. Would you be interested in learning how to make a sandbox, physicalized, open world action adventure game from the ground up?" Like, we literally have no team. We're on a next generation of consoles, which means nobody knows how to build anything yet. We don't have artists or anything like that. "Do you want to come leave Rockstar and come work with me?" And I was like, "Sure." And yeah, so I was same process. Like, we started hiring people. I think at that point in my career, I got supremely lucky because Avalanche has a very sort of indelible Swedish culture to it. It's a very open, warm, and collaborative environment. And a lot of the developers that we were hiring to fill the seats, like combat designers, UI, UX artists, things like that, they were all very patient people. So I could ask a lot of questions while we were learning how to build the game, and they would answer them without like, "Find me somebody that knows what they're talking about," kind of thing. And some of them now, to this day, are still my best friends. We're very close. We've been to each other's weddings and stuff. This is a while ago now. But yeah, from at a certain point, you kind of wake up one day and you realize you know exactly how a game is made based on all those experiences. And my tenure with Rockstar and my sort of filmmaking background from NYFA allowed me to move into the narrative director role, because the Just Cause franchise is a very systems-driven game, and to tell a story in a very systems-driven game can be tricky, but if you know how the game is built because you produced it, and you know how story is told because you worked in it once upon a time, then you can kind of find really good answers to some of the bigger challenges, and I stepped into the narrative director role. And at that point, from there, I basically knew both the Stockholm team, the New York team very well, and I was promoted to game director on their most recent AAA multiplayer co-op game. But after 10 years of service, some interesting opportunities started coming my way, and I just couldn't refuse them, so I moved on from there. But that's as succinct as I can get it.
Well, Omar's story is pretty classic game industry. My story is probably very similar, and I think it's good to know, to take away from that once you're in the industry and you're like, I want to be a narrative. You think you want to be a narrative now. I went to college to be an English major because I wanted to learn how to write well and apply that to narrative design. I did not end up in narrative design in gaming. So you can either go to college for whatever you want and still get into games. And whatever you get into games thinking you want to do, you might do about 14 other things until you land on what feels right. So I think that's an encouraging thing to take away from Omar's story is you might not have an idea of what you want to do because you haven't done it yet. And so once you get into games, the great thing about the game industry is it has such a long runway to kind of try new things. And I would say almost any studio is going to train you and teach you and encourage you to try new things within their studio. So yeah, if you don't know what you want to do, that's okay. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. What's the best way to connect and network with professionals in this industry? This is a really common question at any game industry related panel. Is like, outside of education stuff, going to panels like this, where can you connect with your people? Where can you network with people that can help you get opportunities? Kurt, let's start with you, and then we'll bring it on back to me.
Sure. If you're looking to get into like the indie gaming business, I would recommend going to Gumbo, which is the game collective based in Dumbo, New York. So we have like a shared office space, and there's like, I would say, 50-ish game developers who is doing game as their passion project or like as their full-time job. They're like self-sustaining, and they're also maybe working on some contract and then fund their indie game ideas. So that's the group of people that we're with. If you are on Discord, just look up Gumbo. It's gumbo.nyc. That's the website. You can join the community. You find a lot of information, and people are very nice there. And they also have like some public event, like open for like playtesting or just pure networking opportunities there.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that. I think like those are the kinds of things that I would highly recommend folks go to. I think there are a lot of online opportunities, of course, to communicate with people, one being Game Does with Color Expo right now. But yeah, overall, like I think that like in person, like getting to go to different places, there's Gumbo, there's like NYU does a bunch of things as well. They have like No Quarter every now and then where they give people money to make random games, and then we all just kind of hang out and play them. I've gone to a bunch of these things. I've gone to game jams, which happen every now and then. I know that Coexist Gaming is another space that's starting to build a bunch of games-related activities for people to do who are interested in joining the industry. So yeah, get to know folks, introduce yourself. Maybe don't hand a business card and then walk away immediately. That's one that I've gotten a bunch. And it's like, whoa, like a lot of times I think, we're normal people. We all want to connect and to learn about each other's stories and, think about like, oh, what are cool things that we could do together? Like, is there an opportunity at some point where we could like make something together? It's like very organic and like very creative. And I really enjoy those kinds of things. If you magically have cash to blow, GDC or like Indiecade or like events like that are also very great ways to meet a lot of really interesting people from across the country and across the world. That being said, huge investment. Sometimes GDC does have scholarships. They work with a lot of different organizations, like Game Does with Color got some tickets to give away to folks, but travel is money. So those are, I think like focusing on local, thinking about game jams that you can go to, thinking about community spaces that you can exist in are huge ways to get to know people and get into the industry.
Well, this is a tough one for me. So one thing that comes to my mind, which I used to do when I was a developer, or as a developer, was whenever we would go to E3 or GDC or any one of these conferences, and we were supposed to be showing off the game that we were releasing that year, I would always, look for like where NetherRealm was and go like hop in line to play the latest Mortal Kombat game, and try to show off, because typically what ends up happening is the people that are guarding the kiosks and like managing the players in the line are actually the developers of those games.
Yep, absolutely right.
So what you can do is you can basically, while you're playing their game, be like, oh, so who are you? Where are you from? Oh, you're the combat designer on this game. Well, I really like, can I get your name and number? You mind if I email you sometime? I did that a lot. I did that a lot as a developer, because I was a huge fanboy of some of the other games that are usually on the floor. So that's a kind of a nifty little trick you can try. And then I think that's the best one that I have. I've never been really good at like managing my network. Just never been good at it. But that one is a guarantee. You will get people that work on the games within your network, and just keep showing up to that line. That helps too.
So, as someone who works in talent and talent acquisition, I'm learning a lot. These are all tips and tricks for me too as I think about expanding my network. I'm walking away with something also to take back and put in my toolkit of different ways to network. I will tell you, the industry is small. So I was working with Playcrafting on a network opportunity right before COVID hit, and it was canceled at GDC. So I will tell you, every interaction, every meeting you have, it's the cheesiest but the truest old saying, your network is your net worth. So I would say, as someone giving you advice, manage your network.
Yeah, I need to
you probably
better.
got a great network.
I
I want
need
to
to
tap
do
your
better about
network.
it, for sure. I need to do better about it.
But yeah, I think to all these points, yes, GDC is amazing if you can get a floor ticket, but it's not even so much the floor and the networking opportunities. I can tell you, I did go last year, and the best networking was happening in the hallways, because there was such an appetite to return to the in-person meeting and the in-person conversations that the networking opportunities were just rushed with people. And what happened is we just went out to the street and we just started talking and having some conversation. And there's such an appetite to connect and to have this conversation again, which is so exciting for someone like myself. But get on Eventbrite, get on the meetups, because there's these other meetings that are happening as sort of like a side hustle with affinity groups and folks that might want more information on different platforms like Unity and Unreal, who just want to get together in the garden, have some bonchon together between some talks that are happening. So if there is something happening, like some type of Unity or Unreal event, get on the other sites for the free events, sign up for those, and usually there's Discords that happen on the side. There's Discord chats that happen with those groups prior to getting together to talk about an agenda or topic ideas, or where are we meeting? I don't know exactly where this garden is that you want to meet. So always look for those side opportunities too, to have more of those those networking opportunities and to create real long-lasting relationships, because you're going to have sometimes, like, yes, the important topical conversations of what do you hear, what you do, but then you really get to know each other and find out what the challenge is and what they're experiencing at the moment.
That's absolutely right. I want to echo that, like, if you do want to go to GDC, I would almost recommend not even getting a pass. You probably won't benefit from the show floor. The ROI on getting a pass and what you get from going to the show floor is not great. I hate to say that. But it's the community at GDC. It's where all the game devs are. So you can go and make your own event. I really think developers are kind of taking GDC back from GDC and like making it their own thing. So you don't need a show pass to benefit from GDC. But with that said,
I wanted to add something to that too, really quick. Just Kat, you had made a comment too about don't just run and give me your card.
Yeah.
There are engineers. We get engineers and artists because they're good at putting their head down and cranking out code. Sometimes your networking skills aren't the best, right? Because it just you've learned to live in your code and creating those relationships and creating those experiences. So even sometimes that card, if you just want to run and give it to me, I promise you it's going to live on my desk, and I'm going to look at that Rolodex. Don't be afraid. If that's all you can muster up the courage to do in terms of your first forte in networking, do it. Just do it. I promise you it's going to live there. That's an asset to me. Again, tool in my toolkit. Don't be afraid to do it. If it's a baby step you got to take to just go out there and put yourself out there, do it.
That's true. I appreciate that. You are a top tier recruiter, talent person for sure.
Thank you. I get it.
it is true. And my 2 cents on this question, and I hate saying this, but Twitter? I know Twitter is like We don't like where Twitter's at right now. We don't like who owns Twitter right now. I get it. It's a mess. Twitter's on fire, but it isn't really. It's still fine. And it is one of the best places that you can have one-on-one direct communication with either developers you admire or people you want to connect with, people in your area that are also developing games. You can find communities on Twitter. I have gotten most of my jobs through Twitter, studios reaching out to me, people reaching out to me for projects. And if you've ever seen my Twitter, I don't know how that's happened. I'm not well behaved in the platform. But it is a great place to connect one-on-one immediately. Like someone's going to see your message, and that's the thing. Is I've messaged developers that I admire, thinking nothing of it, and then I hear back from them. So that's a great place to connect. And people always say Discord, but Discord is private. It's kind of walled off. If you can get into those Discords, if you can find them and get in, they're great to exist in. But if you're trying to network or socialize just out in the wild, I think Twitter is really great. And before we move on to the next question, I just want to circle back to what Kurt and Kat said about local New York communities that you guys should write down. So get your phone open, your notepad, whatever, and write down Gumbo Games. Gumbo Games. They are located in Gumbo.
Gumbo Collective.
Gumbo Collective.
It's a nonprofit. The website is gumbo.nyc.
It's .nyc?
Yep.
Gumbo.nyc. And then Coexist.
Yeah, Coexist Gaming is another really great one. I've obviously Playcrafting also has really great events.
It's true.
Yeah.
So you can write down Playcrafting too. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to shill, but we're pretty good. We are a
Yeah.
good community for developers. We help a lot of developers. I've worked with some developers that are in this room right now that have been really great, and we just provide paid opportunities for indie developers. It doesn't matter your experience level. So you can write Playcrafting down too. But then, Coexist is really great too, and I think year over year they've been growing their presence, and they're amazing.
So good.
So write all of those down.
Can I just double down on the Gumbo
Double
thing?
down.
Triple down, I guess.
Triple
You
down.
already doubled down on it. But I know for a fact some of the most experienced developers that I've ever worked with, like some leads on PUBG, this and that, they matriculate around Gumbo Games. They hang out there, checking out what's going on, and you wouldn't be surprised, or I wouldn't be surprised if you ended up bumping into them while they were there. They actually love hanging out around that.
Yeah, the whole Gumbo Collective, because it is like you said, 50 game developers and small studios that are part of the collective. Kurt, around 50.
Yeah, it's who just frequently show up in the office.
Yeah.
That's the ballpark
Yeah,
number.
and we do Play NYC every year, which is an indie game convention that we do in Manhattan, and it's always full of the folks from the Gumbo Collective. So good people to know, a good place to start if you want to get involved with indie developers. But yeah, okay, and let's go with the wholesome question, and everybody just tell us what you love most about your job and working in games. Kurt, we'll start with you and then just bring it back to me again.
Sure. What I love about my job is, sometimes I feel like I don't have a job. Why am I even in this career event? Because I pretty much just, I only wake up for meetings.
This is the honest answer.
And I get to make games that I personally enjoy. So that's something I think that's why I'm even in the business.
No, that's a great answer. You can leave it right there if you want. That's fine.
But maybe something more healthier, or more constructive. It's I guess there might be a lot of international students here in the audience. So, if you're an international student, being aboard in New York, I guess you're most likely already privileged to be, studying here, and most likely you're funded by your parents. So that means I guess upon graduation, you're probably worried that thing the most is going to be your visa if you really want to stay here, right? So it's a totally different type of anxiety as the U.S. student who might be worrying about paying student loan or stuff. like international students have their own different things to worry about. So I would say, you know, aside from trying hard to find a job, there's also an option. You can make your own job. It's just by starting your company. So
Exactly right. Awesome. That's a great answer.
Heck yeah. Yeah, what would I say? There's so many things. I mean, the people are just like so wonderful, and I get to meet so many amazing people who are doing really interesting things. The way that I have set up my work is that I have like a day job as like a product designer working in technology, and I like funnel my money into bootstrapping my own game development, which like means that I get to use all sides of my brain all the time. And I think that's really great because I have a lot of creative control over the things that I produce. And then when it comes to game devs of color, I get all of this inspiration from the people that I get to meet. And then like seeing how everybody kind of comes around the event every year and just like celebrates each other is really beautiful. And then we also give people money to build their own games. So maybe if they don't want to do the bootstrapping thing, they'll just have like 25 grand of money to just like do whatever they want with. And seeing people's responses when we send those emails like, hey, we're going to give you a grant. It's just like amazing and just feels huge because I know that, if I were at an earlier stage in my career and somebody was like, hey, we're just going to give you 25 grand, no strings, have fun. I know how life-changing that can be for people. So just all of like the fact that I can do all of those things is just, it's beautiful. And I really love a lot of the people that I've met in games, and I'm happy that I can contribute in such a way.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I love the most about what I do is the sort of intersection of everybody's role and or discipline arriving at the moment that the player experiences when we've all brought our sort of collective ideas to the center of something, and then just watching somebody play that experience in a way that we expected. I think like designing for human behavior is one of the most addicting things as a developer. Everybody talks about games being addicting and loops being addicting, but for us it's like there is no bigger dopamine hit than watching a player do the thing that you expected them to do, and then surprise themselves with other things. Like that is just,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
just
well
so much
said.
fun.
Emily?
I love that, and I think there's a few things that I could say here, but I think having the passion for technology and immersive experiences and entertainment, how it all comes together and how it's coming together, and seeing the evolution of that and what the next gen experience of games is going to be like. I feel so privileged to be sort of sitting in that, being a part of that, and hearing it and hearing how things are evolving. And again, how it makes people feel when their art is experienced. It's amazing, and I applaud you guys for that. Not being in production and being sort of in a back office role, and there's so much you could do in the back office of a game. There's so many other opportunities, and I can see that at a 360 level now in my role, all these different support roles that exist in producing and shipping a game. It feels like a dream come true. It really does. I sometimes can't believe that I have this opportunity to work with such great creative people, where I could also really be my authentic self. One silly story that I tell is that when I got to Take-Two Games, I always wanted my nose pierced, and I always felt like the corporate environment would not allow me to do that, especially in my role in HR. I felt like I had to present a certain way as an HR representative representing the company, but Take-Two allows me and allows our people to have that creative freedom and to truly be themselves, and I'm so thankful for that. And here I am rocking my brand new bling, but again, I just feel like it's just this empowerment and this being surrounded by authenticity is truly a blessing.
That's actually a really good point. It's like a really cute little ad. And it's true, you can really be yourself in gaming. I think
Yeah.
that's the takeaway there. I mean, I'm tattooed head to toe, I'm a mess, and it's never hindered my job. So anytime people are like, oh, nice tattoos, lady, do you have a job? And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Right.
I have
better
a
than
career,
yours.
in fact.
I think that's the best part about it is that my supervisor took me to go, which is the best part, right?
Yeah.
It's like we celebrate you.
Yeah.
We want you to be your most authentic self. We welcome it. We welcome that creativity and to
It's
bring
true.
it. Yeah.
It is true. That's a really good takeaway. I love that.
Thank you
so
for letting me
we
share that.
are going to start the Q&A portion. We're going to do one last question to wrap things up. So we're going to keep it really quick. But if you do have a question, please line up either in front of that microphone or that microphone in the hallway. Watch your step, please. And again, we are prioritizing students. And when you get to the microphone, just give us your name and your organization and just keep it to one question. So before we start the Q&A, I want to wrap up with one question and just keep it succinct. And I want you to leave the audience with one word of wisdom before we wrap up. Kurt?
One word of
Yeah,
wisdom.
just like give them a
wise
nugget of
word.
wisdom, just
Yeah.
a little kernel of truth that you think, something maybe that you wish someone would have told you when you were starting your career in games.
Right. That's a better way to put it. I would say, yeah. For things I wish I know is that it's getting back to the visa anxiety. Like if you're a F1 student, like yes, you are allowed to start your own business. As long as you can take the risk of running a business, so it's totally doable. Yeah, I learned that, so I felt
great.
like it was a big relief for me. So to know that I don't have to find a job, and knowing what I wanted to do and how to get there, so I, just find my way to be there. So that's
No, that's great, and I think a lot of people would not know that. And I just want to add on to what you said. New York State also offers an incredible tax credit for game developers. So that is something you should look into as well if you were developing games in New York or want to start your own studio. New York offers a great tax credit for game developers. So, Kat.
Yeah, I would say learn to ask for help and be vulnerable. And then I would especially apply that to business. Learn how to, if you're going to be an indie developer in particular, learn how the business works, how to do business. Do not be afraid to ask for help. Get an accountant.
Get an accountant.
Get an accountant.
Wish someone told me that.
Yeah.
Omar.
I don't know how much of this will make sense now, but I'm certain it will make sense at some point in everybody's career. Understand that culture is not about sharing your beliefs and values, it's about sharing your goal with a team of people. Everybody is different, everybody has different values and belief sets, but you all have the same goal. So just learn to separate those two things while working together with other people, and you'll do much better.
I have 3, maybe 4 things I'll say really quickly. I mentioned your network is your net worth. Continue to value every experience, even if it's a terrible manager or someone who's awful to you. That's a learning experience. It's someone that might come back and pop up in your career again. So you might do business with in 10 years from now. So value every relationship, every interaction you have, good, bad, or indifferent. Your craft, practice your craft, personal brand. Don't ever stop learning and stay curious. That's what I would say.
That's great. I love that. Great words of wisdom. Okay. Oh my God, my pants are so noisy. I'm so sorry. Jesus. Okay, we're gonna start with you over here.
Hi, I'm Paul. I'm professionally seeking work right now, and but I did have a virtual reality arcade from business, from the VR industry. But what a lot of people thought was I was entering tech, but I thought I was entering entertainment, more creative field. Do you guys feel that you're more in the tech industry or entertainment?
That's a really good question. I think it's becoming one. I think if you think about the movie industry, the entertainment industry, they're using gaming development platforms to create photorealistic CGI. I think it's Unreal, the platform that's being used in motion pictures. It's all becoming one. It's all becoming immersive experience, immersive entertainment. And I think we're going to continue to see some type of version of mixed reality that is the future of entertainment. And yeah, I think it's one and the same. I would say
do
at
too.
least.
I know it's like not a cut and dry answer, but it really is one and the same. Yeah.
Which means you can benefit from both of the industries.
Yeah, absolutely right. Okay. You.
I'm Michael and also currently seeking work. Have you ever wondered what is the hardest part of your job when you reach an art block?
An art block. For me, as someone that has done 2D animation in games and concept art, for me, literally, it's just walking away from it. You have to walk away from it. When you look at anything too long and you're creative, you're gonna get a block. But if you walk away from it and then return to it with like fresh eyes, work on something else, sketch something else, read a book. For me, it's like comic books because I'm still consuming illustration, right? Looking at fan art online, any like other people's art helps unblock my brain when it comes to art. And so that's what works for me. What about you, Kat?
Yeah, I definitely like, I want to underscore like consuming other people's work, finding ways to get inspiration from other things that are out there, going for walks. I definitely put my game down all the time. Sometimes if I need to do something, then, and if I'm like, I recognize that sometimes it's partly feeling like overwhelmed, for example, and it's like, oh, there's so much to do and I don't know which of the things to do to like move this forward. I try to break it down into smaller tasks, and that is often helpful for getting past a block of sorts, because then it's like, all right, well, like if I need to like figure out how to write, I've got the start and the end, and then the middle is just really fuzzy, then it's like, all right, well, like if I work back from the end, like what's the next, what's the thing that needs to happen for the end to happen? Like you can kind of start to piece things apart, and I find that can be really helpful for getting through those blocked moments.
Absolutely. A resource I wish I had when I was still focusing on like 2D art and concept art in animation was Discord communities. So many devs now have the opportunity to go into these dev Discords and drop their project and be like, I'm stuck here. What do you guys think? Give me your 2 cents. And even though now I'm just observing these Discords and not putting my own work in there, it's amazing to see the epiphanies that any creative has when they kind of drop any aspect of their game into Discord and let their community give their 2 cents on it. So yeah. Hi.
Hi. I got a question of mainly about international students, and I maybe want to hear more from Kurt, but I would like to hear from all of you. I'm currently international student from China, and I'm at NYU Game Center right now, and I'm mainly focused on maybe like a design track, maybe technical design track. I just want to know, like, is there like a clear constraint for international students, especially from those, from different backgrounds, from Asia or other area that different in North America, who wants to mainly focus on, getting a job at design track in the North America game industry? And what would you like to give, like, suggestion for these students, especially like in the Eastern America, where I believe, maybe we lack of some AAA game industry
Right.
resources compared to like
The West Coast. Yeah. Yeah, Kurt, what do you think?
Maybe I'll leave the job part to the professionals, and I'll tell you about the visa part. I have some good old friends from NYU Game Center. There's one way that, I would say arguably a better way to get your visa settled to be able to apply to any of the job that you might want to get later on, is to really showcase yourself a lot and try to get the some like independent artist visa, and then with that you are allowed to work for on contract or any other company that's related to your field.
Okay, so you would suggest getting an independent visa, not having a job sponsor
Right.
as a visa, yeah. Okay,
That's cool.
yeah.
Is
So
that a
from an
way,
HR
to make you,
sorry, go ahead.
is that a way to make it like easier to get an internship or something?
Well, if you're able to get that visa, you're very outstanding already. So you have to be outstanding first.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you talking about the O1 visa?
Yes.
Yeah, it's. I would say from an HR perspective, my HR hat says to not give you legal advice and immigration advice because it's not what I'm good at, right? And I don't want to put you in the wrong direction. But there are different tracks you can take, like the O1 visa. But it takes work. It takes getting accredited and getting recognized for your artwork in a professional way. So, if there are ways that you can get recognition for that work, whether it's publishing or submitting or getting some type of publication on your work, that would be a way to start that process and getting some type of justification for your outstanding achievements in artistry. I would say, though, to your point, you should be open to location. If you're going to think about staying here through your student visa, if there's opportunities that are going to bring you to the West Coast, you should probably explore those. If you have, again, it's resources. But if there is a company that's going to help you do that, be open to location. The other thing to think about, too, is if you're on the STEM visa, which gives you a certain amount of time to work after you complete your degree, there are only certain employers that can do that. The employer needs to be E-verified. And I think you can look that up through simple Google search if that employer is E-verified, whether or not it actually makes sense for you to take time to apply. Because if you go through the application process, which could be pretty lengthy, and they're not E-verified, it's almost a waste of everybody's time, even your time, which is valuable. So something to think about, too. Hopefully that helps you. But again, I would err to talk to the professionals on that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And also, don't ever take an unpaid internship.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Especially as a technical designer.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
We love you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm a senior at SVA, and for my senior thesis, I made a demo for a visual novel. I have it, and now I don't know what to do with it. Like, I don't know, like, where I should show it, like, who I should show it to. So, like, what would you recommend my next steps be?
I mean,
Twitter,
yeah,
just
sure,
like
yeah,
Twitter,
yeah.
LinkedIn?
Submit it to,
Not wrong.
yeah, submit it to various games events, whether it's like GDOC or like, I think IndieCade still does things. I think.
Absolutely.
Yes, they do
Absolute-
things.
yes.
Play.
Playcrafting. You can send it to us.
Playcrafting, yeah, submit it. I would put it on itch.io if you haven't already, for example. Steam, you could also put it on Steam. It's like $100 though, I think, to get
To put a
on
game,
there. But that's still, you can do it if you have the funds, but itch.io is free. And so you can put it on itch.io, for example, and then post it. I mean, Twitter, people love Twitter. And so game devs on Twitter, they will eat visual novels
Yes.
up. I would do that. I would post it in any Discords that you might be a part of. If you're not, you've heard of several Discords. I think this is to the brand building point. Like, you need to get your game out there and let people know what it is. And I think if you just describe, using terms like visual novel, for example, people will be like, oh my God, I want to play this. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a big, I'm not going to tell you how I know this, but there is a big community for visual novels on Twitter. So that is a good place to start. You can check out the visual novel hashtag and just start there. And if you're just looking for people to get eyes on it and play test it, every method is perfect. itch.io, obviously, like Discords, finding people in the community to kind of play test it for you. If you're trying to get it published, obviously that's like a totally separate question, but also not impossible. There's lots of publishers that you can reach out to. And I hate to say, like, just send it away, like just cold call, just send it out, but like really just put it out into the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Hi.
Hello, my name is Nicholas. I've kind of similar to Kurt developed my own somewhat firm that also has combined gaming recently as well as product and other things. It's just to mention Pieces New York City, but I'm curious, probably like the other gentleman mentioned earlier, due to Kurt's experience, but can it relate to the others as well? What might be like kind of your main marketing, you may say, that kind of maybe helped propel that game? And I think it relates as well to the other fields, just maybe just the most, seeing the most results and real authentic users and such.
Right. That's a good question. For a very long time, I struggled to, to publish a game and to be seen. So it's basically like if you just made a game, and put it out there, nobody's gonna see it unless you have money to like advertise it. Then there's another topic. I wouldn't touch that. But if you do want to get your game to be seen, I would try to. I mean, for me, it worked out is that I took the risk to take money. I invest the advertising budget to conventions. So we go to like New York Comic Con and PAX East. So we set up our little booth, which is a couple $1,000s. Then you just show your thing to whoever's coming, and for us it was just maybe my luck that one of the App Store business managers saw our booth and he was interested, so he offered a contact, and later on he featured our game, which lead to our first success of like 1 million download.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Alex, and I represent St. John's University, and we have a small course for game design as a major, and you're getting, and I'm kind of wondering how integral coding is to that, and what I should start with, because I've been trying to learn coding for a really long time, but I don't know where to start, and my teacher's been supporting us, telling us to go to GDevelop as a first, but I don't know what exactly I should start to begin with, and I was thinking Unity or which coding language do you guys kind of recommend for me? Because I feel it's kind of
Depends. My thoughts are it depends.
It does depend. I will say, when you talk about engines, should I start with Unreal? Should I start with Unity? Should I start with one of the smaller ones? It's really preference. I know a lot of people just start with Unity for different reasons, but as far as coding languages, it's such a cop-out answer because it really is personal preference. And it depends on what you're trying to do. So if you have a goal in mind of the kind of game you want to make, the kind of game, is it going to be on mobile? Is it going to be a web game? That can all influence what coding language you should start with if you have kind of an end project or goal in mind.
Yeah.
But when you started coding,
Yeah.
did you just pick one and
Yeah,
run with
I
it?
literally was just oh, I want to make dress-up dolls. Oh, the language I want to make, I have to make dress-up dolls in this language, or I can't have dress-up dolls, so I'm gonna learn it. But what I will say is the modern world that we live in, because I was in 2001 or something. I would ask, do you need to program to make the idea that you want to have in the world? Because, for example, when I was really early into making games that had more of a start and end than just put the clothes on the person, what I did is I worked with a lot of my friends on using this engine called Construct. It was Construct 2 at the time. They have Construct 3 now. It's fully web-based, and you can mostly get it for free. There's a paid version. It's $90, so you don't have to worry about it. It's free to start. And it's literally drag and drop. It's kind of like Scratch, which is what a lot of kids use, but it's more mature. And that can make some pretty full-fledged games. So that, depending on what you're actually trying to do, if you want to learn programming logic, that could be a start, and then you could jump to a program that's more advanced like Unity. You could also do, what is it called? Game Maker, for example. And Game Maker is very drag and droppy, but it also has its own language that's similar to C# and JavaScript and things like that. And so if you wanted to actually use a program that you could then over time mature into actually doing programming with, then Game Maker could be a great example for you. In terms of what I use now, I like web development, and so I use Phaser, which is a JavaScript-based framework, and I would not recommend that unless you want flexibility of I want to make a website, and also I want to make a game. So it kind of depends on what's your long-term outcome or end game.
all right. Yeah, thank you.
Could I just add, you mentioned game design and coding. Is your interest building an entire game, or is your interest designing an experience and then finding a way to code and build and test it? Because sometimes, or at least in my experience, if you try to do both, it can be mind-numbing. But if you have a partner that's interested in coding or building something in some engine like Unity, and your focus is design, then you can work together, partner up, make way more progress, and actually kind of teach each other. These are the principles of design that I'm trying to explore, and then the other person can focus on just the nitty-gritty of building it technically within whatever engine you've decided to build it in, and then you can kind of piggyback off of each other and kind of learn and grow together. That's usually a faster way to get to.
All right. Yeah, I was focusing more on coding because that's kind of just what I'm interested in. But
Yeah.
designing in general is kind of really
Yeah.
interesting.
Take the class. Do it. They're telling you to do it, do it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Alex. I'm from NYU GC sophomore. I was just wondering, are there any resources available, or how did you prepare? I guess this question's more specifically towards Kurt. How did you prepare yourself about the business aspects of when starting an indie studio? Like talking to publishers, having that
Right.
financial document ready.
I wasn't prepared at all, so
Mood, honestly, yeah. Mood.
you just kind of have to try everything, for the first time. Start by emailing people, and like, I would say like probably ask ChatGPT. They will answer a good amount of questions. But I would say like, just try to keep it brief, to the point, and for me, I paid a lot of like kind of professional fees to like consult like lawyers, accountant, and some like established business friends, to really get advice on what you want to do. So like getting like maybe I can tell you more in private, like just get advice from someone who has been through whatever you want to do. Yeah, that's gonna be very helpful.
I would also plug.
No, go ahead, Kat.
Game Devs of Color Expo on our YouTube. We actually have like a playlist that goes through some like games business stuff, and there are people from like Glow Up Games, for example, which is also like local. They've gone through a very extensive presentation of like, these are the books that we read, like this is how we set up our business, in case you're curious, because I mean, yeah, it's really hard out there and there aren't a lot of resources, but yeah, hopefully that video, if you go to our YouTube, can also help.
Every so often, Playcrafting, and also I know Gumbo does too, they do legal courses, like online courses. There's a couple game developers that are also lawyers, business lawyers, and they will actually do like webinars and stuff about exactly this, like starting your own little indie studio. Playcrafting, we're working on doing one in like the next 2 months or so. So again, join these local communities, Gumbo Collective, Coexist, Playcrafting, because we have like a lawyer that's going to do a webinar, and he goes through a PowerPoint of like how to start your own business, what to be careful of, do's and don'ts. It's very straightforward, and that has proven to be a really great resource for like a lot of indie devs that want to do and publish their own work, and also for people trying to start small studios.
For sure. Thank
Cool.
you guys.
You're welcome. Hi.
Hi. I did a CUNY BA for Unique and Interdisciplinary Studies because I looked at all the majors and decided, nah. So mine was cross-cultural multimedia storytelling. From that, you can probably get that my interest in games as largely from a story perspective and in them as a vehicle for storytelling. So for that, I'm not so much interested in necessarily going out and finding a job and telling the stories that other people want me to tell. I'm more interested in mine. And so since we have a couple people up here who have taken very different roads, starting a business versus making a game by yourself from scratch, I was wondering if you'd be willing to talk a little bit on your experiences with those.
What was the question again? Sorry.
Well, basically you started a studio because you had a game that you wanted to make.
Right.
Why did you choose that as the route you did, as the path to making the game that you wanted to
Right,
make?
as opposed
Right.
to going to work for like, a Ubisoft.
Okay. I think it's more of like a passion thing that I would quote like the old department chair used to say, like, creativity sells. I think it's just that we like coming from China, like our culture or gaming industry is very much built on like whatever is existing or whatever is working. There's like a proven model that where they can copy and stuff. It's lack of this system that supports more of a creative work That's how I felt, and that's why I decided to do my own business. And I started like this mindset actually while I was in school building my thesis project. It's that I was trying to be more collaborative with, like, try to find help. I know there are things that I'm good at and things I'm not. So I would just try to find people who is complementary to my skill set to come to work with me. Then in return, I will, sort of pay them. So there's like kind of a mindset that I start developing before I graduate from school. So right out of the school, I think it's worth to share that I made. My first mistake it was that I was thinking too much about like what I wanted to do, but I wasn't paying too much attention on like what's out there in the market and what people actually want to play. So my earlier games was like, it's more of like a personal, passion type of story. That is, that's kind of like turned out to be some like web game. So we worked on several web games, and it didn't make much money. So then I had to, start finding the balance by doing more research. Look out for the. Now I have learned like this to get on those analytic platform and to really get into the business level and learn about like from the data, and then you try to come up with your own angle on adding something new to like certain type of game or genre. That I think will be. It's very difficult. I'm still figuring it out, but that's what I can share so far.
Yeah, I would say in terms of my experience, like I much prefer to tell the stories that I'm interested in sharing, and that's not always like what people want to put money into. And so, like I did do a couple of games where I was like, all right, let me try to like pitch these and like see how that goes, and like I got a lot of negotiations about like, well, we need it to be like this if we're gonna give you money or if we're gonna give you marketing support. And I was like, I don't like that. I don't want to change the game in that way. And so from there, it was like, all right, well, like, how do I make it so that I can make exactly what I want to make without having to have other people, tell me certain set like requirements or rules to get the funding that I need. And then it was like, all right, well, I guess I need to figure out how to amass capital. And it turns out that technology is very good for that. So that was like the reason that I chose to go the route I did. And I did actually think very heavily about like, do I want to run my own like studio? And then it became a question of like, what is my relationship with games? Which is, I think, something that people need to seriously consider. Like, you could go the route where you have to like occasionally make something that sells and then make something that you care about. That's a route of doing it. Another route could be like bootstrapping. I think it depends on like how often do you want to make things that like sell but maybe aren't something that you're as passionate about, and that might help you make your decision.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, hi.
Hi. I'm David Garcia. I'm a fourth-year IT major with a specialization in game development from NJIT, repping New Jersey.
Nice.
So my question is, so for the people who have projects that, they kind of had ideas of, maybe they wrote down stuff in a game design document, or started creating some kind of basis, whether it be code or just different assets here and there. Would you say there's a value to having those sort of things on a portfolio, a resume, all that sort of stuff?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You're talking about like the most rudimentary stuff, like from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Like from your design doc. Yeah, that stuff, for me at least, from the perspective of hiring, is so interesting to see. I think you get to know a lot about the designer from those materials.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elias, senior at St. John's, communications major, art minor as well. So I just wanted to ask, bear with me if this comes off a bit sloppy, since someone else already answered my question for me, but I have a great passion in video games. Would like to make a video game or two one day, but really it's animation, working in art. That's like my biggest passion, the big end goal, dream type thing. And I was wondering, it's a developing in video games. Is that that's obviously that's a good start for like that kind of stuff, right? Just like working in those indie studios you suggested, like it's a good way for resume building, getting like art from making games like those.
Are you asking if you should do art for games independently or get a start working for like a bigger company?
Get a start.
To get a start, I mean, I think a good place. I would recommend, and I think developers would answer this differently. But I think if you found other developers in your community, whether through like these Discord groups or other dev communities, you can find people that can program and design and do narrative, audio, and then you can do the art. If you can network with people that can kind of fill the gaps of what you don't do and make like a game together, that I think is a great start, because you can make these little mini games, whether they're web-based, mobile, on Steam, and you create your own portfolio of these little mini games that you're creating yourself, with other people in the community for fun. I think that for me is like the best place to start with making games.
Yeah, and I would actually I would say there's nothing wrong with trying both at one time. I think you could be working on your crafts and building your skill set and your toolkit and what your capabilities are, while also exploring working with a larger company. And your journey will flesh out where it needs to be, whether you're working for an independent studio creating games on your own, or you land on working on shipping a really great game with a large team. I don't think that there's anything wrong with exploring both in tandem.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hi.
Hi, I'm Jackie. I'm an international student in SVA, sophomore in illustration major, and I really want to have a gaming job, but I found out that the courses that provide me in the class in the school probably is not that related to gaming. So I'm deciding to like having a graduate school about the game design major. I wonder, is that like helping me to find a job or stay in United States better? And also, do we have to like change our style to make it related to the style that the company want to like honey?
I see what you mean. Yeah, never change your style. Your style is your style. You will be hired on the merit of your style, and if as an illustrator, you can learn to replicate certain styles. But I think so we've talked. I think a reoccurring theme for me when I do panels like this, or I talk to people that have been in gaming a long time, and you heard Omar's story, is you can start in gaming with honestly no education, or a degree that does not pertain to any aspect of video games. So if you do get a degree in game design, you you have that knowledge, that context to go into game design as an illustrator even better. You get like kind of like a head start. But if you're a good illustrator, you can get into games no matter what.
Yeah, like immediately. Like
Yeah.
you could go on one of the Discords that we've talked about, or like volunteer for like game jams and get actual like hands-on experience and like build connections with people. I think that's going to be more valuable. Not saying if you're already set on doing this program, then cool. Like you will probably get connections through like the professors that you have classes with and stuff. But I think that building connections with people on the ground and actually making things is like people value that, because these programs are so new that it's like we don't know what to do with it yet.
Right, exactly.
I also want to piggyback on sort of the ways to get into the industry. I think specific from an engineering lens is, I mentioned it when I talked about the movie business, right? We're using real-time sort of immersive technologies to create visual effects. There's also, I don't know if everyone's heard of serious gaming, where there's large companies in defense and government that are creating immersive experience and using these platforms. And there are companies, when we're thinking about really great engineers that know how to use these platforms and have great engineering skills, you can get those skills in Unity and Unreal through maybe a Serious Gaming or through visual effects. There's so many engineering skills that it takes to build a game. Motion capture, what the render farm looks like, graphics engineering. There's so many different ways that you could have these engineering skills to find a place in shipping a game. It's not just design, it's not just creating the multiplayer aspect of it. There's so many ways you can get into it. So I wouldn't focus so much on gaming. I think to everyone's point here, there's getting in and then figuring out what you're good at and where you land, whether it's in post-production or in the art room or in narrative design, level design. There is really so many aspects and so many opportunities inside shipping a game. Don't get laser focused because you might get in and say, you know what, I hate post-production, I need to be in pre-production. And you figure it out, and then relationships and what you're good at will rise to the top and you'll flourish that way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Hi.
Hello, my name is Jaden, and I am representing Hostos as a student and a community manager for the game design program, actually, and for a fan project as well that I'm part of. My question is, how do you know as a developer or as a designer that you've successfully embarked on your vision? Do you take player feedback into account after the game has released? Do you take into consideration, did you meet your own goals during development? Do you take a step back and see what the flaws were in your game and try to improve it if you do have the opportunity to make a sequel or a spiritual successor? How do you basically find out, or how do you basically come to an agreement with yourself on that you successfully created the vision that you had when beginning to create your game?
I mean, that's a very good question. You pretty much described everything you're supposed to do, too, in asking that question. I think the guiding principle is, what is the experience you want the player to have from the very beginning? Like, honoring that, no matter where your journey takes you. Like, this is what the game is supposed to be. This is what we want the player to do. Testing it along the way and being honest with the feedback. You know, one example I can give is when we were working on Just Cause 3, early on, the build didn't look super great. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Just Cause franchise, but it's pretty much a game about being up in a parachute and sort of raining down chaos on the enemies below. But it has a lot of overlap with other third-person cover shooter games like the Gears of War series or the Max Payne series. And really early on when we were playtesting and doing a lot of UR work, the feedback we were getting from players was, enemies are always hitting us, we need more cover. But if we're honoring what we want the gameplay experience to be, we want the player to be up in the air, not running around on the ground looking for cover. So the decision-making mechanism there was, how do we get the player up in the air firing down on enemies, not how do we add cover, because that's what players are asking for. So you have to honor what you're originally setting out to do, measure it along the way, and try to make the best decisions possible. And then yes, once you get to the end of that journey, there's a period of reflection of like, oh man, you know, some of those decisions didn't necessarily work out. The player's not doing exactly what we wanted to, but you know, that's just a part of the growing as a developer, you know.
If I may quickly add on, I don't know if you're familiar with speedrunning communities and people who play games a little more optimally. Do you think that whole idea of players abusing system mechanics to be optimal in games and get the craziest times, or just make the game a little more easy in some ways, do you think that goes into consideration as well, like how we have failed the system, designing some of the system mechanics?
I mean, what I'd say about that is it's something that's on our mind, but not necessarily something we always prioritize unless it fundamentally breaks the game in the easiest way possible all the time. But exploits are going to be a thing, and at least with the teams I've worked on, if the player has identified exploits and they're having fun, then we've done our job.
Right, and I will say I know a lot of developers. I would say a larger percentage of developers love speedrunning and love the modding community. Yeah. So.
Definitely
yeah,
us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. I know we never have the opportunity to get to everybody's questions, but if you guys have a question that did not get answered, or you like wake up at 3 a.m, you're like, I really wonder about this, you can email me at Christy@playcrafting.com, and I will answer your question or put you in touch with somebody that can. Or if you're just looking for kind of a database on the communities that we talked about, I can send you links. So please feel free to email me. I mean it. It's no problem. So Christy, KRYSTI @playcrafting.com. And you can email me any question, I will help you. Thank you guys so much. Give a round of applause for our panelists. Absolutely.